All right, section 1.1, precautions. Although the PCM42 is a very well-behaved device, precautions consistent with good practice for any piece of audio gear should be observed as a matter of course. Yeah, that is the Lexicon PCM42. Hands down, the most awesome sounding digital delay line that I've ever put my hands on, both in the studio and out on the road. This is a device that shows up in pretty much every production that I've been involved in over the past 30 years. And I can promise you that I have never been at front of house mixing a live show without a PCM42 at my side. And there's a reason for it. In my own experience, there is not one single piece of gear that I have ever played with in the studio that's more inspiring and more creative. This device literally changed my world. I'll never forget the first time I ever heard a PCM42. It was absolutely jaw-dropping experience because up until that point, just about all of the delay lines that I had access to had a much lower bandwidth. This is something that Lexicon figured out with this PCM42 is they offered this delay with much longer delay times at full bandwidth. Yeah, this unit came after the legendary PCM41, which has a very unique sound of its own. The reason the PCM41 is so legendary is that for the most part, users are using it in that ×2 mode. So it's only got like 6K bandwidth or something. It's quite lo-fi on the playback, which is exactly what you want for something like playing guitar into an echo or something like that. You want that echo to be kind of trashy sounding and not so good. Yeah, for me, I've always sort of looked at the PCM41 as a real musician's delay, whereas the PCM42, more of an engineer's delay. This one was made for recording engineers, and it has everything to do with offering the longer delay times at full bandwidth. Yeah, I probably should have read that precaution 30 years ago. Do you know how many speakers I've blown with that delay? This thing is absolutely awesome, but it's dangerous because the frequency response is literally 10 hertz to something like 16 kilohertz. So you can do damage with this thing, I can promise you. And so for today's session, I want to share some examples of exactly how I like to use the PCM42 in my everyday workflow. All right, in this first example, it's one of the most classic uses of a single channel delay line where I'm just adding a slap echo to a voice. So in this case, it's 133 millisecond delay time, 0 feedback, and just blending some of the delay signal in. Check it.
Free your mind. Free your mind.
Classic effect on the human voice and something that I use all the time when I mix. Very, very effective at pushing that vocal out in front of your mix without taking up any space. It's one of the biggest benefits of using a slap echo. 0 feedback, a really tight delay, right? Doesn't take up any space in your mix, yet it adds all this depth and perceived presence of the voice. Yeah, the slap echo is a very effective use of the delay for almost any lead line, not just the human voice, but guitars and anything that's sort of right on top of your mix. Very well suited to feed into a slap echo. The next effect. I absolutely love the effects of flanging. I mean, it all started with one of these, right? The digital delay has made it really easy to set up flanges. It's really tight delay time. We're talking like 2-3 milliseconds with that depth all the way up so that that delay time is being slightly modulated and then mixed 50-50 on the blend. Absolutely awesome sounding. Let's listen to what this PCM42 sounds like as a distortion unit. Check this out. That is pure grot. I love the sound of the distortion that this unit makes, and something that I rely on heavily when I'm looking to really crush a sound and add something to the outside edges of that sound. I reach for the PCM42 often. When using it with 0 delay time and no modulation, and seriously overloading the input, yeah, this thing makes some nasty sounding distortion. Well, Lexicon introduced a design feature to the PCM42 that makes it extra special. They put a 2-stage compressor limiter on the input side of the delay. So whatever signals that you drive into it are affected by that limiter. But more importantly, the feedback loop is heavily affected by this. When I take the feedback knob and I turn it up full blast, it sends the output of the delay back into the input, but through this limiter. And the limiter prevents this delay from going into crazy overdrive when you're talking about feedback. Many of you know exactly what I'm talking about, but if you pull out a classic, Korg SDD 3000 or even the predecessor, the PCM41, and you take the feedback knob and you pin it and then send a signal in there, depending on your delay time, it won't take long before that regenerated signal turns into something that you basically don't even recognize. It just starts self-oscillating and turns into ultimately just a tone. Yeah, that limiter produces a regeneration that sounds much closer to a tape echo. Yeah, many of you have seen in past sessions how much I love the kind of infinite decay of the PCM42 and how I'll often record it into my DAW and then flip it around for a building factor in my mix. Absolutely awesome laying down delay and then reversing it and playing it backwards. I strongly encourage you to get up to that practice. I've covered this in past sessions, but nothing will make up for knobs on hardware. There's just something magical about the ability to be able to play a delay like this. When you've got a physical piece of hardware that's got knobs on it, well, now you've got a piece of gear that you can play. We've got access to some of the most incredible sounding plugins, but they're plugins. They're on a screen, and I love them, and I use them every single day, but I play hardware. Yeah, no question, this piece of gear is probably better classed as a studio weapon. Thanks for sitting in on today's session.